Did the Bible predict the current war in Israel? Does it reveal what might happen next? Well, let's find out. Zephaniah chapter 3 verses 1 through 3 speaks of a time before God's decree of wrath is unleashed in full measure. However, it says to his faithful remnant that we are called to seek him, uphold his justice, not ours, seek after his righteousness and walk with humility. Zephaniah chapter 2 verse 3 further explains why. So that it may be that you will be hidden in the day of the Lord's anger. So what is the Lord's anger? The Lord's anger in this verse, in my research, not only applies to all the times of anger that God enacted in the past toward ancient Israel and toward the nations back then, it also applies to the tribulation period. So before the great day of his final wrath, that we may be hidden in the day of his final wrath. This lines up with a lot of other scriptures, folks, concerning the tribulation period. As we approach it, certain events will happen. And that's what we're seeing in this war with Israel. So before the day of God's angry wrath comes, there are certain things that are seen in Zephaniah chapter 3, Isaiah chapter 11, and Psalms 83 that are prophesied to happen before that great day of wrath and before the great tribulation happens. These chapters also describe prophetic patterns of God's anger that was unleashed in Israel and toward Israel's enemies in the past, that also apply to future events as a prophetic pattern. Prophetic patterns show us what to look for from past events. I think it's Ecclesiastes 3, I can't remember the verse, it's through like 10, 11 through 15 there. It talks about what was, and what will be is seen in the past. I'm just paraphrasing it. It talks about that. And so those are prophetic patterns. By looking at these patterns, we can measure how close to the end we are getting and just prepare ourselves, okay? And all indications, folks, is we're getting close. We have the WEFers, world government forming. We have AI coming upon the scene, and now a war in Israel. Nothing happens by chance here. So what we're seeing in the current war in Israel is also in these 3 chapters, as well as Israel's ancient history. How so? Well, let's go ahead and find out. And look on the screen here. I'm going to start bringing up some scriptures, and we're going to start talking about it right now. It says here, "For Gaza shall be forsaken, and Ashkelon desolate. They shall drive out Ashdod at noonday, and Ekron shall be uprooted." Note that this was partially fulfilled after the 1967 war. I bet you guys didn't realize that. It was partially fulfilled. And when several coastal cities like Ashkelon was finally secured by Israel, and yet Gaza was not left forsaken, as it says a little bit later on. It became a place of immigrants, in refugee camps where these people have been and still are used as cannon fodder to justify acts of genocide to get rid of an entire race of people. The next verse, and I added the word meanings here to try to make it a little more clearer for you guys. Let me bring it back up on screen. Zephaniah 2 verse 5, "Woe to the inhabitants of the seacoast, the nation of the Cretanites." Cretanites, I put the definitions here, means sea merchants that send supply. These refer to ancient sea merchants, where the Phoenicians come from. So these are basically, to modernize this today, it would be merchants. That's why I put sea merchants. "Woe to the inhabitants of the seacoast and the nation of the Cretanites, which are sea merchants sending supplies. The word of the Lord is against you, O Canaan, land of the Philistines. I will destroy you, so there shall be no inhabitant." What does all that mean? Back then, as today, the seaward side, or the ports of Gaza, the merchants supplied supplies to the Gaza, Ashdod areas where the Philistines were, provided weapons and munitions and supplies back then so these people could fight ancient Israel, okay? And so when 1967 war transpired, Ashdod, Ashkelon were made secure, and they've been under terrorist attacks ever since. But recently, now it's a little different with these rockets being sent in. And so, but Gaza still remains, and it's called the Gaza Strip, okay? So the seaport was destroyed back in ancient days, okay, and the Philistines were driven out, so forth, etc. And then, as nowadays, the seaport there in Gaza has been neutralized by the Israeli Air Force. Next, in verse 6 and 7, refers to results of the 1967 war in Israel, what transpired, as well as pointing to future events that we're seeing today. So, as it says there, we see the inhabitants of the seacoast, the Iranians sending ships in there and trying to, and if you watch the news and different news sources, you'll find out that they've stopped Iranian and other terrorist organizations sending supplies and munitions into Israel along the coast of Gaza Strip, just like it says here, just like it happened before. So we have a prophetic pattern that happened in the past, will be seen again in the future. We've seen this before. So we're going to go ahead and look at the next slide, the next verse, and kind of unpack this for you. So hold on, folks. This gets pretty intense here. And it says here, the seacoast shall be pastures with shelters for the shepherds and the folds of the flock. Verse 7, the coast shall be for the remnant of the house of Judah. They shall feed their flocks there, and the houses of Ashkelon shall lie down at the evening, for the Lord their God will intervene for them and return their captive. Again, this part was fulfilled after the 1967 war. That area was secure, and other coastal cities like Ashdod were made secure. And over time, since the 1967 war, this area became very fruitful and productive. And despite minor terrorist attacks and some rockets being fired, they were at peace until October 9th, 2023. When a barrage of rockets hit Ashkelon. So we're going to look at the next verses here. Zephaniah 2:8 says, I have heard the reproach of Moab and the insults of the people of Ammon, in which they have reproached my people and made arrogant threats against their borders. Now that is a very interesting verse. This is always has happened in the past, but it picks up again in the last days. And so Moab and Ammon refer to the border areas of Jordan. That's where those places were located back then. To modernize this area has become known as the West Bank, where many of the same people migrated into Israel after 135 AD from the Moab, Ammon area and Eden area. They migrated into this area after 135 AD. And later took residence on the West Bank. That's where they came from. You know, after Israel was driven out of the land in 70 AD, these people came in and occupied the land. Don't be fooled by propaganda, folks. Don't be fooled by propaganda. So this area refers to the border areas of Jordan, and to modernize it, these are the same people that migrated into the West Bank. So let's look at Zephaniah, chapter 2, verse 9. And it says, Therefore, as I live, says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, surely Moab means people of his father shall be like Sodom, a place of burning anger, and the people of Ammon, that means the sons of renown of the mountains, or mountaineers, like Gomorrah, people submersed in rebellion, overrun with weeds and salt pits and perpetual desolation. The residue of my people shall plunder them, and the remnant of my people shall possess them. Okay, so what's this talking about here? So that's what we're going to look at real closely. Just keep following me, keep tracking with me. because this gets quite interesting. This was partially fulfilled after the 1967 war, and this pattern was seen in history as well. Today, Israel possesses the area of the West Bank, however, jointly with Arabs there. Just like the verse says, over many years in that area, we have seen the next verses that I'm going to explain come alive. So the Lord host, and remember in chapter 2, verse 8, it says, these people made arrogant threats against the borders. And so you have the West Bank area making various threats against the borders of Israel. Okay. And so there's contention there. And so there's partly under Jewish control and partly under Arab control by treaty right now. So you have this prophecy being fulfilled from 1967 onward to the current day. To Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 10 and 11. This they shall have for their pride, because they have reproached and made arrogant threats against the people of the Lord of hosts. From day one, when Israel came back in 1948, these folks around all the Middle East made little teeny Israel, a population of about 9 million people, which is about close to 7 million Jewish people there living in Israel now, surrounded by multiplied millions of hostile people, are making arrogant threats. Arrogant threats. What type of threats? We're coming back for your land. We're going to wipe you off the face of the earth. Iran's been saying we are going to exterminate Israel. That's the chant. Hamas and Hezbollah are both supported by Iran. They share the same goals. Genocide. Genocide. I'm just telling you. And you have these arrogant threats being made. Chapter 10, verses 10 and 11. And they shall have for their pride, because they have reproached and made arrogant threats against the people of the Lord of hosts. The Lord will be awesome to them, for he will reduce to nothing all the gods of the earth, and the people shall worship him, each one from his place, indeed, all the shores of the nations. Verse 11 talks about a time that's going to be fulfilled in the millennium, okay, in the millennial reign of Christ. Okay, look at Zephaniah 2:12. You Ethiopians, okay, this describes the Sudan region of the Sudan. Also, you shall be slain by the sword, and he will stretch out his hand against the north, to the north of Israel, and destroy Assyria, the old empire region from Syria, Iraq to Iran, and make Nineveh, the capital city, described as a portal of death and chaos, a desolation as dry wilderness. I inserted the meanings here for you and the places where these things exist. And so the verse continues, and it talks about Nineveh. And make Nineveh. Nineveh was a capital city, and it's been described as the portal of death and chaos, where these people slayed and people and hung their bodies on the walls of the city and beheaded people in droves. This is historical fact. So what does all this have to do with today? Well, Nineveh symbolically in the Bible symbolizes something. Nineveh comes from a compound word meaning the abode of Ninus. Who is Ninus? Ninus was the son of Baal, who was also known as Nimrod, who was mentioned in the Bible, whom Josephus identifies as the epitome of evil. He is also known as the hunter of men, making slaves, forming a world empire bent on forms of strict Baal or Baal worship. An enemy of God's people who hunts them, seeking to destroy them and force everyone to worship him and his god, the head Baal or Baal god, or else. If you don't worship this god, it's curtains. And they had a saying in Nineveh that their god is greater. Okay? It's all in the history books, folks. Modern day counterpart might fit somebody called Ah. The phrase Allah Akbar expresses Nimrod's temperament, which literally means Ah is greater than your God, the God of the Bible. This would be Satan or Satan, who is said to be Nimrod's father according to historical lore and mythology. I'm not going to get into all that and the different disagreements on that and whatnot. I'm just trying to put this in a nutshell so you understand. So the capital of Nineveh was destroyed. However, its system, like Babylon, who was also destroyed, remains to its day. It would be considered a portal where people congregate who become vile animals. Portals are conjuring points that can transfer from one location to another. If you know anything about the occult world, that's how they do it. So Nineveh would be considered a portal where people congregate who become like vile animals, terrorists, liars, to enforce their system to dominate all. Thus, it moves to a new area and sets up shop. Here's a brief aside note for you. Historically, the coastal area of the ancient Philistines took on that nature. The current area of the Gaza Strip might be a possible portal for the Nineveh-type temperament to flourish. It's evident to me it is. Recall that these ancient folks burned their children in the fires of Moloch worship and were utterly ruthless as the Assyrians were. Okay, back in the day. The old Assyrian Empire no longer exists, but it is symbolically identified to include parts of Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, all the way to the current Iranian border. And some of the prophecies refer to the lands past that, which would be Persia or Iran. This prophecy was carried out, but also in the future it will be actualized as prophetic patterns go. And verse 13 concludes like this. I forgot to put it in the slide. And I will make Nineveh, the capital of portal of death and chaos, a desolation, as dry as a wilderness. So this speaks of turning something where this portal is into a desolation. We're seeing that, and what I can put together here and did research on shows that that area happens to be the Gaza Strip. Verse 14, I applied the word meanings into the text. This is important to do to increase your understanding. Zephaniah 2:14, the herd shall lie down in their midst, every beast of the nation, both the pelican and the bitterin. These two animals refer to demonic spirits, shall lodge on the capitals. Capitals represent seats of power, dominance, rule. It's a portal area. Of her pillars, refers to rulers over the rules for society, and it refers to laws. Okay, people don't know that. When they read this, they don't understand they just don't take the time to explore this. And it says, their voice, chants, words shall sing, praise to their God with shouts of destruction. That's what the word sing means. Praise to their God with shouts of destruction in the windows. This refers to an opening in a wall used to magnify chants and praises to their gods. Okay, I want to stop right there. I've never been to Israel, but I've always watched videos from people who have gone over to video in there. And in the background, you hear these towers and these chants all day long. And they end with Allah Akbar. Their God is greater than Israel's God, the Christian God. This is prophetically being fulfilled. And yet people overlook these verses and they fail to see the significance. Okay, let's keep going. Their herd shall lie down in their midst, every beast of the nation. These are head and leading demonic spirits. They'll lodge in the capitals. Their voice, their words will sing praise and shouts of destruction in the windows. Their God is greater, just like Nimrod did. Desolation shall be at the threshold, for he, God, will lay bare the cedar work. What is the cedar work? I wrote it down here for you. Cedar work symbolically refers to the splendor of a foundation that was laid in the past. In this case, in context, refers to the foundation of death and ruin. Someday this foundation is going to be razed to the ground. Thus, the foundation of Nineveh or Nimrod will one day be made utterly desolate and destroyed. That is exactly what that means. That's what it means by the cedar. The cedar is going to be destroyed. The foundations of this ruinous thing is going to be destroyed. It will be absolutely fulfilled in the millennial kingdom when Jesus comes back, but also we'll see the pattern of it being destroyed beforehand as well, to mark how close we are to it. So let's look at the next slide in Zephaniah 2:15. This is the rejoicing city that dwelt securely and that said in her heart, I am it. There is none besides me. There's a certain phrase of a certain religion that says something very similar. And it matches this to a T. It really does. That rejoicing city, that portal area, dwelt securely and said in her heart, I am it. There is none besides me. The modern counterpart is the hubris of these people, as well as their chants that their way is it. Submit or else. Their God is greater than the God of the Bible. Well, I should say note Isaiah 14, not Isaiah, but I wrote that wrong. And note Isaiah 14, who said the same thing. I will ascend my throne above God's. This is the same type of thing. They're going to put their religion, their rule, down on you as Nimrod did. Everybody will have to comply. You'll have to get a mark to buy, sell, or eat, okay? This is that type of system. It's going to develop into the Antichrist system later, the same format. But this religious ideology, we'll see there's going to be a great war that's going to humble these people, setting the stage for a new system that'll unite the world, leaving out this religious component that these people are using. You're following me. If you read the Bible, you know what I'm talking about, especially Bible prophecy about the new the governance of the world by the Wefers and the AI systems and so forth, etc., and the transhuman stuff. All that fits in here, and that new system. But this old system is going to have to go. It serves its purpose to create chaos, to set the stage for this new order to arise from the ashes. I'm telling you, folks, just keep tracking me. Some of you are going, yeah, I get it. Some of you have no clue what I'm talking about. So let's keep going here. How has she become a desolation? That means a ruin, which is a waste of life, resources, now becomes an astonishment as a wasteland, a place for the beast to lie down. Or, this could refer to a place where only animals dwell, or the beasts like people dwell, or buried under the great debris. Just think about what's happening over there now with the collapse of buildings. Everyone who passes by her shall hiss and shake his fist. That meaning is they're going to shake their fist with contempt and say, finally, you're done with. The horrors and terrors you propagated have ceased. You got what you deserved, will be said in unison in many places. This fits in what we're seeing happening in the Gaza Strip today, where the same mentality is evident through Hamas and up north in Hezbollah territory, and around certain areas of the Middle East, not everywhere, but in some places. They share the same mindset as ancient Nineveh had. Whole sections of cities were recently laid waste in the Gaza Strip. This fits. Zephaniah chapter 2 correlates with Isaiah chapter 11 verses 10 through 15 and what we are seeing today. So I'm going to go to Isaiah. And Zephaniah sets the stage. You need to know Zephaniah before you understand Isaiah chapter 10 through 15, okay? Chapter 11, verses 10 through 15. So let's look at verse 11. Isaiah 11:11. It shall come to pass on that day that the Lord will set his hand again a second time to recover his remnant of his people who are left from Assyria, Egypt, from the Pathros, Cush, from Elma, Shinar, from Hamath to the islands of the sea. Verse 12. He will set up a banner for the nations, will assemble the outcasts of Israel together, dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Also the envy of Ephraim shall depart, and this speaks of an animosity between two predominant factions in Israel at the time when this comes about. When the envy of Ephraim stops, will happen when the adversaries of Judah manifest. That's what it's saying. We are seeing this in living color actually happen this last week. Let me explain. Look at verse 13 here. Ephraim means double fruitfulness. That refers to the secular Jews, because Ephraim and Judah were brothers. Okay, they were brothers. So Ephraim, a double fruitfulness. That means the secular Jews shall not envy, have strong emotions and zealous envy over another brother who's called Judah. It means those who praise and worship God. These are the religious Jews. And Judah, those who praise and worship God shall not harass, trouble, or distress Ephraim, the secular Jews. So this is very important because this just happened. Israel is united like never before because they were attacked. Just before that, it showed a very sign of weakness in Israel. You have the religious Jews going at it against the secular Jews who said, well, look, we prospered the land, we planted vineyards, we made Israel, and we don't want a theocracy here, okay? So there was this animosity going on between the two, and this verse describes a time when the adversaries attacked Judah, okay? And then Ephraim and the brother Judah are going to get along and form a coalition, and this just happened last week to fight a war against the adversaries, just like this verse describes. That's exactly what happened. Let's go to the next slide. But they shall fly down upon the shoulder of the Philistines toward the west. The next phase of Isaiah 11:14 has not happened yet. They shall fly down. The phrase fly down has a very interesting meaning. So I'm going to go to the next slide. But they will fly down upon the shoulder of the Philistines toward the west. That's the verse. So I broke it down in 3 parts. We'll look at they shall fly down first, upon the shoulders of the Philistines next, and toward the west next. AMG's Complete Word Study Dictionary of Old Testament Word defines flying down. The phrase flying down is implying drawing of one's sword to come down hard on enemies. With this, please note that the current Israeli action is called Operation Swords of Iron. Where does the sword of iron hit upon? Upon the shoulder of the Philistines. Shoulder means sides, and note that there is a right shoulder and a left shoulder on the human body. One shoulder is to the south, called the Gaza Strip, and the other is to the north, the Lebanon area of the Philistines, and toward the west. What is toward the west? So we got to ask your question here is, what is toward the west? Well, toward the west lies the Mediterranean Sea. So to go towards the west, you imply attacking from the east and going towards the west in the Gaza Strip. Up north, it implies cutting off supplies and supports that comes from the east, like from Iran. They hit 2 airports and destroyed their airports, so the Iran can't send supplies into Gaza. They're indirecting and stopping shipping into the Gaza Strip through weapons. They're trying to get the Gaza Strip metro underground tunnel system neutralized as well from Egypt. So to go toward the west would imply attacking from the east, going towards the west in the Gaza Strip. Up north, it implies cutting off supplies and support that comes from the east, like Iran, so forth, etc., and place a barrier there, as well as some sort of pincer movement in southern Lebanon that will go toward the sea. What shall be done is described in the next sentence in the text here. So I'm going to look at this. Next sentence in the text. Together they shall plunder, okay, you read that. Together they shall plunder the people of the east, that means Iraq, an area, and Iran, that area, toward the east, that's what that means. And they shall lay their hand on Edom and Moab and the people of Ammon. I mean, Edom, Moab, and Ammon basically is where the current West Bank is now, as well as parts of Jordan. They shall obey Israel. This is what it's saying, folks. It's saying that the people in the West Bank, there's going to be some strife and trouble there, but Jordan will basically stay out of it. That seems to be lining up. There's trouble in the West Bank, but over in Jordan basically will probably, most likely, stay out of harm's way. Okay? Verse 15, the Lord will utterly destroy the tongue of the sea of Egypt. With his mighty wind, he will shake his fist over the river and strike it in the 7 streams and make men cross over dry shod. I find this quite interesting. You know why I find it interesting? Notice a recent article from the Green Matters headlines reads this: is the Nile River drying up? One of the world's most famous rivers is in danger. This article from the Green newspaper talks about the Nile River drying up. It's been doing so since about 2017. From Politics to Today, August 2023, not too long ago, the headline reads, "The world's longest river could dry up, the Nile dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia." And then goes on and explains why the Nile dispute is and what it is and why it's drying up. And so we see this in this slide. Verse 50, "And the Lord will utterly destroy the tongue of the sea of Egypt with his mighty wind. He'll shake his fist over the river and strike it in the 7 streams and make men cross over dry shod." The 7 streams talks about where, guess where that is? That's the headwaters of where the Nile River comes from. Where is that? Parts of Sudan and parts of Ethiopia, and goes a little farther down south. That's the water that empties into the Nile River. It goes way down there. That's what it's talking about. And that August 2023 headline reads, "The world's longest river could dry up, Nile dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia," or the people of the south, where the headwaters are. Now, is that coincidence? Some people would say that that verse is coincidental, but it seems to be coming to pass even as we speak. So, what's next? Okay, let's go back to the next slide here. Isaiah 11:16. "There will be a highway for the remnant of his people who will be left from Assyria, as it was for Israel in the day he came up from the land of Egypt." Traditionally, this has been solely related to the time of the millennial reign of Christ. It does, as well as all the precursors to that final event. It expresses a pattern seen in the 1948 second regathering of Israel as well as what the Jerusalem Post described in its April 2023 opinion piece before the current war. More Israeli citizens are comfortable leaving the Promised Land. Why? Well, thus maybe after this war is over, they will return. Why? The Psalms 83 war has been won in a dramatic way. So what we see here are people leaving Israel for some period of time. More people leaving Israel than immigrating into, as many articles and news reports have reported. And here in this verse, it talks about God making a highway for the remnant of his people who will be left in these areas to come back. And they'll come back because the Psalms 83 war has been won. What is the Psalms 83 war? Let's look. Psalms 83, verses 1 through 4. A song, a psalm of Asaph. "Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make atonement, and those who hate you have lifted up their head." For decades after Israel has returned, these towers are pronouncing that day after day after day, just like I went through earlier, okay? Creating atonement. "Behold, your enemies make atonement, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, 'Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more.'" What group of people in the Gaza Strip, in Lebanon, in Iran, who are saying the very same things now as we speak, and as this war grinds on? Are they not saying the same thing? Have they not taken crafty counsel together, as we found out that Iran is funding this? And there's a council going on, something in the background that the depths that we haven't even plumbed yet, of people trying to use this crisis for other nefarious reasons, to implement some other thing, all this stuff, and taking counsel together. "And they have said, 'Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more.'" We see protests in America, Australia, New Zealand, in the West and around the world, and in college campuses. We're siding with the people who want to commit genocide. And they turn it around and saying, the people who are attacked in their sleep and at peace kibbutzes were attacked in Israel. Innocent people and children were butchered and killed. Women raped, dragged back there. Over 1,400 so far around that of innocent people killed. And Israel's just supposed to take it because if they retaliate, then they're the evil ones? Come on, get a life, folks. These verses describe an event where enough is enough, and they're tired of this crafty counsel, and Israel is going to take action. This is what these verses are talking about. This most likely is leading up to the Psalms 83 war. How so? Well, let's look at the next few verses of Psalms 83, verses 5 and 6. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you. So what I'm going to do here in verse 6, I'm going to add the meaning of the names. It's very telling. It reveals a lot of information, and very few people have done this. And I did it here for you, so you can, and I'm going to read it with a verse, and I'm going to go to a next slide and read it with just the name meanings inserted into this verse 6 of Psalms 83, verse 6. The tents of Edom, the bloody red ones, and the Ishmaelites, those who hear their God, Moab of his father, of the Hagarites, those who fled Jebal to the mountains of Lebanon, Ammon, the sons of renowned mountaineers, and Amalek, who dwell in the valley, Philistia, land of immigrants, with the inhabitants of Tyre, the rock of pride, Assyria, those who lie in wait, the ambushers, also have joined with them, and they have helped the children of Lot, those who cover over and hide something. Shelah, pause, think about it. So pause, think about this, meditate on what it's saying. Let's just take out and put the meanings of the names here so you can see it. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you. The tents of the bloody red ones, and those who hear their God of his father, and those who fled to the mountains of Lebanon, the sons of renown, the mountaineers, those who dwell in the valley, in the land of immigrants, with the inhabitants of the rock of pride, with those who lie in wait, the ambushers, have joined with them. They have helped the children of those who cover over, hide something. Most likely that refers to the world media and propagandists on college campuses we're seeing and around the world, worldwide. How you like them apples? Just look at it. You see the bloody red ones who love the relish and bloodshed, who hear their God of his father, and those who fled to the mountains of Lebanon, Hezbollah, Hezbollah fled to the mountains of Lebanon, the sons of renown, the mountaineers, those who dwell in the valley in the land of immigrants, the Gaza Strip. Gaza means land of immigrants. With the inhabitants of the rock of pride, with those who lie in wait with the ambushers, have joined with them. Okay? And they have helped the children of those who cover up, hide something, and that most likely is the propagandists and the news media we're seeing take root, who use this war to somehow flip it back that Israel is the bad ones for trying to defend themselves against this ruthless attack in the Psalms 83 war that involves the same people in the same areas that are happening right as we speak, the same groups of people in the same geographic locations. Let's continue. It says here, deal with them as with Midian, as with Caesarea, as with Jabin in the brook of Kishron, who perished at Endor, who became as refuge on the earth, and make their nobles like Oreb and Zebah, yes, all their princes like Zebah and Zublah, who said, let us take for ourselves the pasture of God for the possession. So let me break this down for you here as best I can, so you understand what is being said. I'm just going to read this, and you look on the screen as I read this to you. You can read it yourself. Deal with them as with Midian, okay? Refers to Gideon's 300 blew the trumpets, and the enemy slew each other in confusion. This is spiritual warfare that people need to pray about. Send confusion into the camp. Raise up Gideon's 300 here. Next, as with Caesarea, as with Jabin at the brook of Kishron. What does that mean? Sisera and Jabin refers to the days of Deborah and the use of a tent peg used to kill Sisera by, I think it was Jabin's wife, because he was exhausted by constant battle. So, folks, I want you to really think hard here. Thus we see a wearing down of certain enemies of God and bringing confusion into the camp so that certain leaders will take shelter to rest. That's what that means. And then they are suddenly killed. Please note that one of the founding members of Hamas, who was the mastermind of the slaughter of over 1,400 plus innocent people in Israel, last week was killed in an airstrike on October 9, 2023, while taking shelter. You could say a tent peg was driven into a skull in a figurative sense. Nothing happens in the Bible without some meaning, prophetic meaning here, and we're seeing it unfold before our eyes. Verse 10 talks about those who perish at Endor. Okay? Those who perish as Endor became refuge or excrement on the earth. Okay? What does that mean? And just look at the verse up there. This involved where Gideon selected 300 men to carry out God's plan of the sword, of using trumpets, lanterns, and shouting. And it might mean that a small force of Israel will do the impossible again during this war, as Israel is surrounded. So they'll have maybe 300,000 troops spread pretty thin to do the impossible. They have to watch the north flank. They have to watch the southern flank. They have to watch the center. How could you possibly survive this war with these people all round up to wipe Israel off the face of the map? Have news media compliant to justify doing so by riling up people in foreign countries and nations to legitimize the genocide? You got to think real heavy what's going on. Okay? And we see that. Verse 11. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zebedee. Yes, all their princes like Zebah and Zumlah. Okay? Oreb and Zeb were taken captive by Gideon and killed. Zebah and Zula in Judges 8, chapter 8, verses 13 through 21 were the kings of the east of Israel that at that time who ridiculed and wanted the land of Israel. Their army of 120,000 was reduced to 15,000, and these two leaders were taken captive as they retreated. Also, their main watchtowers over up in Lebanon area was destroyed in the process by Gideon's 300 men. Okay? It's very important what that means when you read it in Judges there and what it all means. I'm just breaking it down for you. Please note this, that there are two towers on each shoulder that was recently destroyed by a small force of Israelis firing some missiles. They took out down one tower in Gaza, and they took another watchtower, literally a watchtower, just like it's prophesied here, in Lebanon that Hezbollah used. It's on the news. You can watch it. It's right there. And so we're seeing that unfold. We're seeing captives, Hamas leaders being taken captive even as we speak. It happened last night. Some were taken captive, and some others have been killed by the iron sword, or the sword of swords of iron, being unleashed. Their nobles like Zeb and Oreb, and all their princes like Zema and Zumlah, who said, "Let us take for ourselves the pasture of the land." And so that refers to Judges 8, chapter 8, verses 13 and 21, where the kings of the east of Israel at that time, who ridiculed and wanted the land of Israel, came and attacked Israel. Gideon's 300 took care of them. Their army of 120,000 was reduced to 15,000, and these two leaders were taken captive as they retreated. Also, their main watchtower was destroyed in the process by Gideon's 300 men. I just told you how the two towers were destroyed. Why did this happen is described in verse 12, and in verse 12 supplies the answer. Psalms 18, verse 3, it says, "Oh my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind, as the fire burns the woods and the flame as the mountains of fire." So in verse 15, "So pursue them with your tempest and frighten them with your storm." That is very interesting phrase. So people as intercessors need to cry out, and they need to cry out big time what this psalm is saying. Oh God, make them like whirling dust, like this chaff before the wind, as a fire burns the woods and as the flame sets the mountains on fire. Pursue them with your tempest and frighten them with your storm. Please note that the recent Hamas murderous operation, translated into English as Al-Ashkat, means storm. And I have a link below. I have links below to verify what I'm talking about here. And it talks about, they call the storm. And it says, fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name, O Lord. So how could the Bible mention this operation by Hamas with mocking contempt by having God's storm fall on them instead? All happened in October 2023. Listen to it again. So pursue them with your tempest and frighten them with your storm. Why? Because these folks released Operation Storm against Israel, so God released your storm against them. How could that have been known, folks? How could it have been known when this was written? This is prophetic, folks. You got to learn how to read Bible prophecy. Okay? Fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name. So some of these folks may just repent. Others may not. There's going to be a war brewing called the Psalms 83 War. And it is taking shape right now. Psalms 83 verse 17. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, you are the Most High over all the earth. What do they shout from these towers all over Israel? They end it with a certain phrase that their God is greater than the God of Israel. So listen to this verse again, and it will make sense. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth, not the one whom they proclaim. Think about it. Think about it, folks. Think about it. Hard and heavy. Think about it. This is a plea to God so that his name, which his enemies mock by calling their God greater than him, this is a prayer to confuse the enemies, as in the days of Gideon, by a small force that's facing extremely larger force of overwhelming enemies who seek the utter extermination and want their land. Are we seeing any of this in fulfillment right now? And all I got to ask is that you have to decide. I want you to think real heavy and hard about what you are seeing transpire right now in the nation of Israel. It's all coming to pass. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth. Amen. Okay? And remember, I talked in Zephaniah how they have these towers and they use these towers and they shout things over. That is we're seeing it. And they have an operation called Operation Storm, the deluge of the storm, depending on how they say it. A storm that creates a deluge, an overwhelming flood that'll wipe Israel off the map. And here God's mocking them and saying, God, send your storm. Send your storm. Make them like whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind, as the fire burns the woods and flame the mountains. And pursue them with your tempest and frighten them with your storm. And that recent Hamas murderous operation is called Storm. Fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name. How could the Bible mention this operation by name and with a mocking contempt by having his storm fall on them instead? All happening in October 2023. This is too uncanny not to notice. And you intercessors who want to pray for Israel and for the peace of Israel, this is what you are to pray. Psalms 83, and cry out in one accord and do that. And make that your prayer for the people of Israel, for the world. Why? Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth. In other words, the Psalm 83 war is inevitable. This could very well be it. All the same people that they have mentioned are doing the same thing with the same intensity as ancient Nineveh did. They have the same God. They had the same one that Nineveh worshiped, the Nimrod or Ninus. And they go by a different name. It starts with an A, and they chant death to Israel. They chant those things. We see it. This war will probably be used to set the stage for the coming world order of the ages that's going to take shape with the help of the WEFers, the World Economic Forum, what we call WEFers. So all could be by design. It'll be a great war that will lead into where the immigration to the people leaving Israel, the Jewish people leaving Israel, will suddenly stop and say, hey, God defended us, and they come back into the land of Israel. And there sets the stage for the Antichrist to emerge and possibly a third temple to be built after this miraculous event. And the small number of Israeli forces that are used to wipe out a huge number of enemies by God's hands. People will see the hand of God in this, like in the days of old. Gideon only had 300. He sent confusion into the camp. Pray for confusion to be sown in these people. These are murderous thugs. They like to use the news media and paint themselves as innocent victims, or they are the perpetrators of murder and mayhem for decades, actually centuries, goes way back, eons ago, so to speak, 6,000 years ago plus. This has been going on. It'll finally end someday. So think about it. Think about what's going on. Again, I'll close with this. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the Most High over all the earth. So there you have it, folks. That's my synopsis of what's going on, correlating it to prophetic events that I see in the Bible that match the names and the places and the people and their temperament. The sons of the mountaineer, Hezbollah, sons of renown, Hezbollah, of the mountaineers of Lebanon, on the northern shoulder of Israel and the southern shoulder of Israel, where Israel has Operation Swords of Iron being unleashed. And the word fly down, and used in Isaiah chapter 11, refers to sword being unleashed for vengeance upon the area of Gaza itself. It's too uncanny not to be true. So you decide. With that, I'm going to sign off and let you guys go. And if you'd like to contact or support what I do, all my contact information is up there. And if anybody tries to contact you by email and finagle any money out of you, report it to me, because that's not me, because I don't do that. And I leave it totally voluntarily up to you. If you'd like to email me, contact me, support me. But most often I just ask you for your prayers of protection, because, things are coming down the pike in an unreal level that we haven't seen yet. And this very well, most likely, is the beginning of the Psalms 83 war. All the players are there. Strap on your seatbelts, folks. This is a milepost marker. Israel has been regathered a second time in the land, as the Bible speaks about. He says in Isaiah, I will gather you a second time. That was fulfilled in 1948. Jesus said that generation will not perish until they see all these other things fulfilled. And in Matthew 24, the 1948 generation's getting older. They're getting up in their 70s now. I want you to think real hard and heavy what's going on. I want you intercessors, if you would just take a little bit of advice, stop decreeing and declaring and get down on your knees and start quoting and pray however the Holy Spirit has you to pray Psalms 83 in this event right now. because Asaph wrote that long ago to address a situation back then, which is a prophetic pattern, what we'll see happen today. All the players are there. I'm not making this up. I'm not stretching anything. Go look up the meaning of the names yourself. Do your own research. With that, you guys be blessed in Jesus' name, and I'll see you next time here on the Christian Marauder Show. You guys be blessed in Jesus' name.